Are you ready to break free from old patterns and create positive change that ripples through generations? Welcome to the Cycle Starters Sanctuary, a free healing community where ancestral wisdom, astrology, and pleasure converge for conscious evolution and generational empowerment. Join our vibrant community of female-bodied beings across all lineages and cultures committed to breaking intergenerational patterns. You'll get access to monthly live Q&A sessions with guest experts, exclusive content, early announcements about upcoming events, and our free Navigating the Cosmos guide. Ready for a deeper journey? You can upgrade to our Ancestral Healing Collective for an enhanced experience with guided new moon pleasure practices, expert workshops, and a supportive private community. Visit heatherrebeccawilson.com/sanctuary to join our sacred space and start your healing journey today. Together, we're creating new cycles filled with ancestral wisdom, healing, and embodied joy. We'll see you there. Hello, and welcome to the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today I am thrilled to introduce you to Gwen Dittmar, an extraordinary guide who bridges the worlds of science and spirituality. With an 18-year background in pharmaceutical and biotech research and a master's in spiritual psychology, Gwen brings a unique perspective to personal transformation and healing. In this episode, we'll explore Gwen's fascinating journey from the corporate world to becoming a renowned teacher, coach, and the creator of Somatic Medicine. We'll discuss her powerful work with human design, her experiences in ancestral healing, and how she helps high achievers and entrepreneurs align with their soul's purpose. As a certified professional coach, human design coach, and shamanic energy medicine practitioner, Gwen's approach combines ancient wisdom with modern understanding. Her personal journey through healing childhood illness, a near-death experience, and navigating life as a single mom while maintaining 20 years of sobriety adds depth and authenticity to her work. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about breaking generational patterns, embracing our authentic blueprints, and starting anew. Welcome, Gwen.
Hello. That was so fun to sit and listen and hear.
Well, I'm happy that you are here, and we're going to have fun today chatting about all the amazing things that you do and chatting about your ancestral healing journey. The whole purpose of this podcast is to illuminate this path for people, right? Like, what does it really mean to do ancestral healing? And I love just having different guests come on here to share their stories, because I think it just makes it way more approachable and accessible. You are going to be leading an experience inside of the Ancestral Healing Collective, which is my monthly membership, in April. So we'll spend some time talking about that, giving people a preview of all the magic you're going to share. And then, we'll talk about your other projects. So I'm happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited to see you. Well, so why don't we get started with you sharing whatever you feel comfortable sharing about your ancestors and your ancestry?
Yes. So I was always told that I was primarily from German ancestry and also English and French and Irish. And it was very interesting for me when I was probably in my mid-20s. I went through a master's in spiritual psychology. And so I did a lot of deep diving. In our second year, we did a relationship project where we needed to heal a relationship. And we also had these other projects where we had to look at, it was based on John Bradshaw's book, Healing the Shame That Binds You. But it was like a family tree, and it was expanding on just individuals and years of birth and death. And it was looking at also patterns and types of relationships and types of addictions and personality traits and mental health and within each of the people and within the relationships and the connections between the people. And so what I saw were these really deep patterns both on my mom and my dad's side. And so up until that point, I had been sober for a handful of years, but no one in my immediate family identified as, an alcoholic or in any other recovery. And no one in my extended family had ever really talked about alcoholism or recovery in any shape or form. And I would say in general, I tended to be the person that, would beat to my own drum within my family and move out to California and start a business and versus just kind of following the usual pattern of life. It was really interesting in the connection points. What I started to do was inquire, other family members, go kind of even farther outside of certain family members that I knew. And what I started to realize was there actually was a pattern. Oh, there was a deep lineage of addiction and alcoholism and certain behaviors. And from this project that I did, I just learned there was also mental health challenges on both sides of the family. There were very interesting dynamics and patterns between parents and children, spouses, siblings, the number of times people would move in their lives, just a lot of interesting stuff that really opened my eyes, I think, for the first time into lineage work and ancestral healing, and seeing a lot of these certain patterns and behaviors, personality types. In sobriety world, they call it character defect. I'm not usually a big fan of that term, but I understand where it's coming from. And just really seeing a lot of certain things inside of myself and having the courage to identify that and take personal responsibility for that and to choose something different. To really choose, like, this is going to end with me. There was also sexual abuse that I became aware of and patterns of that in the family, and becoming very clear that I wanted that to end with me. At that point, I was told I wasn't going to be able to have children. So I just forged ahead with wanting to help other women, so that if that was the only way that I could truly mother or support other beings in this world, that maybe it would come through that maternal energy of clients. And then I would say my ancestral healing kind of took a whole nother tone and flavor when I became pregnant with my daughter, and then a whole nother tone and layer, I would say, when I, met my ex-husband and became pregnant with my son, and a whole nother layer when I realized that I needed to move through a divorce and really take a stand for myself and for what I wanted for my life and what I wanted for my children. And it was really hard. I would say that one was harder than some of the other ones because I had done so much work on myself and I had been sober for so long that I felt a lot of shame for being in a relationship that was not really conducive to the type of life that I wanted to lead, the way I wanted to raise kids. I felt like I was trying so hard to make all these right decisions. And I think that was a deep healing of not only perfectionism as like an ancestral healing, that, I was doing the best that I could do. And I still had not probably healed certain things like really, really deep down. I mean, I'd done a lot of deep work. And then there were also a lot of layers, I think, of ancestral healing in relationships with men, certain types of men, certain types of personalities and traits and behaviors. And that, it was a very deep healing. And, since then, I would say it's kind of continued. I think even now, what I'm coming to believe is that there's going to be different iterations of ancestral healing. If I choose to be a conscious person, if I choose to be, in an energy of healing and growth and expansion, that's going to be something that's always going to be happening. So, it's interesting to notice the last few years what I've been moving through. is really, I think, deep ancestral work around owning my power, using my voice, having boundaries, saying no, being very clear about what I'm saying yes to, and really deeply, like at a whole nother layer, like respecting myself and honoring my intuition. I think there's a lot of deep healing that's been happening around that, both at a personal level as well as female lineage and honoring intuition above all else. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting to like also observe my kids, and a lot of how I grew up and what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable, the way that my kids have a lot of freedoms that I didn't have, and that they have a lot of voice where I didn't have voice. And so sometimes it makes it challenging, at the same time, it makes it so rewarding because even if I receive something from them that feels jarring or feels like it would have completely not been acceptable, for my parents, and that I'm really learning that when those things come to me through my kids and it feels jarring, it's also a big win and a big celebration that they have a voice and that they have boundaries and that they say what feels good for them and what doesn't feel good for them, and that they know that, at such a young age too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, being a mom to 2 kids, you definitely have your hands full in addition to supporting all these different clients with the many modalities that you engage with. Your workshop that you're going to be leading in April is going to be an introduction to human design.
Human design is such an incredible modality. It integrates Vedic astrology and quantum physics and the Hindu chakra system and the I Ching and the Kabbalah tree of life into this like one system where Ra Uru, who downloaded this information and saw all these ancient philosophies overlapped on one another. And so when you get a body chart and you get information about your human design, what it's really doing is it's showing you your cosmic blueprint of why your soul incarnated into this unique human experience with all of the beautiful and gritty things of your human experience and your lineage. And I would even say not only your human lineage, but also like your soul lineage. And what's so cool about it is that it gives people a very clear map as to why they experience things in a particular way, similar to astrology, because it does blend astrology in. What I just find also too through this I Ching, which is like a very ancient, Chinese text, and Qing incorporates these 64 gates, and each of these 64 gates have a very unique energy and flavor and meaning to them. And then when they're paired with whatever astrological house they were placed in, that gives a whole nother flavor and meaning to who you are and to your blueprint. So there's things that we can see like, your Mercury and what gate it was in and what you're really here to share and communicate, usually from a business and a work lens, whereas your sun and whatever particular gate that it was in shows you what your gifts are and just truly why you're here, what your gift is here to share. Sometimes that shows up as work for people, and sometimes it has nothing to do with your work in the world. It just has to do with your purpose as to why you're human incarnated to have this unique gift. And then let's say, for instance, our earth and the gate that the earth is in will show you what you need in an earthly existence, in an earthly human experience, in order to fully experience your gifts. So there's so many ways that the human design just gives us this very clear map. And I love tools that are very practical, yet also very esoteric and can expand your consciousness and your healing. But I think for me, one of the things that I love about human design is even just looking at something as simple as your profile number. So your profile number is going to be something on a free chart that almost most people have downloaded, especially those in your community who are listening to this podcast. And being able to look at your profile number, it'll look like a fraction, right? It'll look like a 2/4, a 5/1, 1/3. Those numbers, 1 through 3, 4, 5, 6, they each have a unique meaning. And that's, again, another flavor of why you are here and what you're supposed to be doing here. Just the flavor of your humanity and how your humanity is going to show up. So it doesn't necessarily mean, again, your job, but it's going to be a flavor of how you show up in your job and what kind of your natural energy and gift is going to be in that particular thing that you're doing in your life, whether it's a relationship or a job, or how you show up in your community, or how you volunteer, how you parent, etc. And so one thing from the profile number that I loved learning, I went through a 2-year certification. It was very intense, but that when someone has a 1, 2, or a 3 in the first number in their profile, they're going to tend to learn things very internal. In life, they're going to be able to go inside and really learn and experience through their inner experiences. They may have experiences outside, but they're going to tend to have less like alarming or jarring, intense, like, or just even lots of life experiences that like get them to learn, get them to get the lesson, to wake up, to open up. Whereas people who have a 4, a 5, or a 6 in that first number, they're going to tend to have a lot of things in life that make them learn internally. So a lot of external experiences that give them the learnings that they need inside. So for instance, when I learned that about myself, being a 5/1, having a line 5 in my first number, it made me realize that's why I tend to have a lot of these life experiences that really jar things around and wake me up. And why maybe my best friend who has a 1/3 doesn't have a lot of those kind of jarring experiences in life, because a lot of her learning is going to happen more internally. It's not going to be as initiated by something outside of her, an external experience. It's going to be a lot more internal journey. So, I mean, just there's so many tidbits in human design, little things that really help, I think, right size some of the judgments that we have about ourselves, unknowingly judgments that we have about ourselves of like, why do I tend to have all these experiences? Like, why this? And now why that? And then why that thing? Why that legal thing with that father? And why another legal thing with that father? You know, it's because some of us experience things externally and some of us experience things more internally. So when people look at their map, right, it's going to look like a human with a head at the top. You know, it looks kind of like where the third eye might be, but that's our ajna. It's going to look at like where your throat is. Then there's another center here. In human design, it calculates over time as we evolve as humans that we have energy splits where our energy expands and evolves and grows. Instead of just being a 7 chakra being, we have now evolved into a 9 centered being. So we have an energy here that looks like where it would be the heart, but it's actually called the G center. And it's kind of an evolution of the heart. So the heart in human design is the energy center that's a little bit below where we would think the heart would be, but it's really the willpower center in human design, our heart. It's all about willpower, determination, drive, discipline, like this ability to be able to do that, what you want to do in life. No accountability needed. Like you are just the willpower to do it. Whereas our heart started to become evolved into this energy of who am I? What's my identity? What do I like? What do I not like? What's me? What's not me? You know, what's my lovability? What's my worthiness? And then we just keep having these energy centers, right? Down below would be our solar plexus, which was also another energetic split because we evolved as a species from just being a primal instinctual being in our spleen to also having this solar plexus, which is very all about emotions and our emotional capacity and what we pick up and what we tune into from other people. Then we have our sacral and our root. So what I love about just all of these centers and all of the planets, and people will see these little arrows in their human design, which is this whole other part of human design that has to do with our personal health system. And then what I was speaking to were the gates. Those are all these little numbers that people see in their chart. So all the numbers are the same on everybody's chart, right? So you and I have the same numbers that go across our head, go across our thinking, go in our throat, etc. But what's going to be different is the configuration of what gets highlighted and what's not highlighted. So some things will have a little line on it, and some things will be totally open and white. And so again, each of the centers will have colors or they'll be white. A lot of the gates will have colors or they'll be white. And just all this configuration starts to bring together all these unique energies of where planets were when you were born and where they were and what gates they were in that give you all these unique flavors of who you are. Also, it takes in consideration 88 days before you were born. So like your unconscious self. So we get to see all these things about our personality and who we know to be who we are. And then all these highlights of our shadows and our vulnerabilities and what we might not really see about ourselves, but that's kind of there lurking in the background and a lot of times driving our behaviors, our emotions, our thinking, our patterns in life. So I just love it because it's this like very practical, tangible, and, understanding your energies, understanding your vulnerabilities, understanding your shadows. It all gives people so much, I find, either validation or people feel like that's why I've had that experience, or I've been like that, or that's kind of shown up this way in my life. Or it can sometimes challenge people where they don't really recognize things that they hear in their reading or that they see in their chart because they've been so conditioned out of who they actually are by lineage, by culture, by race, by society, by family, by schools, religions, etc. It's just fascinating how much of a map it can be for people.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to say, I'm so fascinated by all of this. And thank you for sharing all of that. And I will testify that when I finally learned that I was a generator, it was so validating. It was so amazing and empowering to realize, like this is just how my energy runs. And it's been a healing process to decondition myself, to like allow myself to be that generator, right? And there are different types in human design. Can you just briefly go through those types for folks?
Yes. So you are what's known as a generator. So initially there were 4 types in human design. There were reflectors, who are about 1% of the population. They're going to be a lot more rare. They don't have anything highlighted in the centers in their human design chart. They're completely open. And so they function more off of the transits of the moon and the moon moving through these different gates. So reflectors have sometimes lots of generative energy. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have a lot of willpower. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have very clear thinking, and other times they don't, based on how the moon is transiting through their chart. So what's super helpful when I've had reflector clients is we can run through like professional system where the moon is going to be transiting for an entire year. So that they have a better idea if they have the ability, and even if they don't have the ability and they work in corporate, that they can still learn to accommodate these different energies that they're going to tend to feel. Reflectors have this really beautiful quality because they're so open to be able to really see into like wherever they are. So they tend to be like a very clear barometer of their environments, the people, the relationships, the work, the projects, because they are really picking up and reflecting back the energy of system of wherever they are. So it's really powerful to have a reflector in your business or in your life, on your team, And if you have one in your partnership, it's really important to make sure that you honor this like beautiful ability that they have to reflect and to really pay attention to how they are feeling and how they're showing up, because that will tend to reflect the microcosm of what's happening around them. And some people might not be ready for that degree of transparency and reflection,
I
right?
was just about to say,
Yeah.
sounds beautiful and intense too.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, I've had a reflector in a couple of clients, and I also had someone that was, supporting me with my business and that went through a couple of my programs. And it was so powerful to have that person. They just are incredible leaders. They're incredible, strategists, guides for people. So it's a powerful energy if you're ready to have that. And then the next type is called manifestors, and they are about 7 to 8% of the population. And I'm a manifester. And so manifestors are the only type in human design that are here to inform and to initiate. And what that really means is that they're the only type that is purely here to have a urge come out of nowhere and to take action on it, and to initiate it into the world and to inform other people about what they're doing, what's happening for them, and what they're creating. And a lot of times manifestors, similar to reflectors, have a very different energy than the other types. Manifestors also have a very different energy in that they tend to have long periods of rest where they're building this momentum and they're reconnecting to this like urge that wants to come through to them. And then they typically have an urge, and then boom, they like initiate it, they create it, they put it out there, and then boom, after they inform, they kind of have this big crash of energy again. And then they need to like rest and rest and rest until again that momentum builds. So there is some talk in human design world that manifestors a lot of times can feel very different because they're not just constantly having these energies and able to function off of this energy that most of our general population is generative. So they feel very different. They feel also it's challenging for manifestors because they're not here to respond to things. So they're not here to respond to children asking for things all the time. They're not here to respond to partners saying, hey, can you do this? Can we do this? They're really here to inform and to initiate what they want and what is coming through them. So they can also have a lot of conditioning and require a lot of deconditioning around anger, because when manifestors are interrupted, if they're in one of these urges, they're going to feel a lot of anger because their urge is being stopped. It's kind of like the sensation of feeling like you have to pee or you have to poo or you're like about to have an orgasm and like someone comes in and squashes it. These energy cycles are not very conducive to modern society, which requires that we have generative energy that just functions all day, every day. So manifestors can often have a lot of health issues because they go to total burnout. And some of the joke about manifestors is that they seem almost bipolar because they have total rest, which if we don't understand what's happening in a rest cycle and why we need rest, it can be misconstrued as depression or a freeze nervous system state, or if we're not really taking care of ourselves and we don't really understand these cycles that happen. And the urge can often look a little bit manic because it's this thing that like has to come out of them and it's almost beyond them. And there's a joke too that like manifestors can do in a very short period of time what most of the other types do in a year. Manifestors will boom, like get it out, and then they kind of crash. And then the next type is projectors. And so projectors are about 20% of the population. And these first three types that I've described, the reflector, the manifestor, and the projector, they are what's called non-sacral types. So they don't have their sacral center colored in like you do. So what that means is that, again, they don't have this constant sacral energy that's just plugging along and supplying them sustainably every single day. It doesn't need to be filled up. It just keeps going and going and going and going. It's like an engine that just never stops running. So projectors, they tend to also have that somewhat of that burnout because they don't function that same way. Projectors tend to move more on a daily cycle where if they work a little bit less and do a little bit less than the generative types and they rest a little bit more each day, they actually have more energy, they have more abundance, they have more to give when they actually are focused on working or producing or parenting or, spousing or taking care of a home. And so projectors have also this very beautiful energy where they really know how to lead. They really know how to manage because they have an energy that, again, is not like the reflector, but it's similar, but it's a little bit different where they can see things that other people can't see because they're really seeing like the whole projection field. And so what's really important for projectors is that they need to be invited or they need to be acknowledged. So if they try to interject themselves where they're not acknowledged or they're not invited, they're going to tend to feel like they're hitting their head against a wall. And so it's hard, again, in our society that's very conditioned about like, just do it, make it happen. You can do anything. Everything's possible. For projectors, that really goes against their energetic cosmic blueprint. They're really meant to sit and to kind of wait for someone to say, hey, do you want to come onto this podcast? Hey, it's so great meeting you. Would you like to come and work for us? Hey, I'd love you to collaborate on this project or freelance for us. So again, it feels like they're waiting. It feels like they're sitting around. It feels like they're not maybe taking action in the same way that these generative types are, or in the same way that the manifester has this big forms and initiates. And then it can look like the manifester is doing a lot, even if they're like totally burned out and resting, or it can seem to projectors like they're not matching up with the generative types. But what's super empowering when I've worked with projector clients like CEOs and, really incredible business owners and healers and, influencers is that when they work less and they rest more, when they're working, their work becomes more potent, more powerful, and it starts to project out to even more people. I've had CEOs who've been really scared to cut back on work time and to delegate more things. But when they have people that they trust, that they know are going to do what they need to get done, whether in their corporate team or in their family life or, having people help them in their home or in their own business, and they get to take care of themselves and rest, they actually make more money. They're more effective. They grow their following in their communities. So it's really important for projectors to take that time to rest and nourish themselves. And then we have the generative types. So generators, they were the 4 main types. Then there was an evolution in humanity where the manifester plus the generator started to be born into existence as a manifesting generator. So that became the 5th type. But really the manifesting generator and the generator both have that sacral center colored in. And so they function in a very sacral way. They have a lot of energy. Generators tend to move more slow and steady, kind of like taking one step after another and building. And generators do really well when they niche themselves. Whereas manifesting generators, because they have that manifester like urge and rest inside of them, combined with that constant sacral energy, they have a lot of energy that's just like boom, 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 and constantly going. So even though generative types and manifesting generator types have sacral energy, generators can even look at manifesting generators and say like, oh my God, they're doing so much and they are just spamming it out and moving on to the next thing. And they do 5 different things. And I'm just trying to get this one thing going. And it can feel really frustrating also for generators, right? To kind of see that energy. But what's important to know is generators do have that just very consistent energy that's going to keep going and going and going. And as long as they keep going, a lot of times generators can stop right before they get to that last stage. that last step that puts them over the threshold. So it's really important for generators to just watch if they stop and to make sure that they have accountability so that they don't stop. Whereas manifesting generators tend to have a lot of different things going on. They can do a lot of things at the same time because they have that manifester and that generative energy. They're really meant to function more like generators, but they also are here to honor their informing and their initiating inside of them. So they're here really more to respond to life, just like generators. Generators do well when, again, they are like, oh, that's a cool podcast, but I could do it better. I'm going to do this. Yes, I feel that inside. That's called responding. And that's what generators and manifesting generators are going to do best when they function in life that way. Whereas the projectors are going to do better when they wait for the acknowledgement or they wait for the invitation. Manifestors are going to do better when they honor, I want to urge this and I'm informing, initiating, putting it out there. It doesn't matter whether people want it or not. It's coming through me. And reflectors do best when they wait a full 28 days for the moon to go through an entire lunar cycle before they make decisions, before they make big moves in their life. And a lot of reflectors, once they learn this about themselves, then they realize that's why I have taken so long to make decisions. When a manifesting generator is just like, that's a podcast, I can do it better. I'm going to start it today. I bought all this stuff on Amazon. I'm ready to go. Manifesting generators also, because they have such quick moving energy, they can sometimes miss very necessary steps. And they can sometimes forget to inform and to initiate people about what they're moving on to next or where they're going. So it's really important, even though manifesting generators, part of their gift is that they have this fast moving energy and they don't really like to be boxed in or niched into something. They like to be able to move around and have that freedom when they're done with something to kind of move on to the next thing. But it's also important for manifesting generators to learn that there is power to when they slow down and they really look at some of these steps that they might be glossing over or missing or just skipping because they're so fast moving. And it's really funny, to just be able to watch these different energies, in my clients and my children and, my co-parents and, my family members and my friends. It just gives a whole different flavor to other humans in my life, whether they are triggering and challenging and spiritual teachers or whether they're easy and there's flow and there's love and reciprocity, because there's so much truth to these behaviors and these types and then all the other flavors as part of your human design. For instance, my daughter is a manifesting generator, both my son and my daughter. And they both just rip open the box and the instructions go all the way over here. They're just starting to put the ice cream maker on. And I'm like, wait, you have to look at the instructions. You have to look at where the blade goes. My daughter got an ice cream maker for Christmas and she just poured the extract into the thing and she put in a tablespoon versus a quarter of a teaspoon. And so we just get to laugh now at stuff like that. We tasted it and it was horrible, and I'm like, how much did you put in? Show me on these spoons. And she's like, oh, I just grabbed this one and just put it in. I didn't think it mattered. And I was like, that's a total manifesting generator thing. So I think it also too gives a lot of compassion and a lot of acceptance. And I think just leniency in relationships, knowing some of these traits of the different types and all the other flavors of their human design. So I think that's one of the reasons why I love it, is it helps me coach people differently. Whereas I think before I knew human design, I kind of coached people the same in a way. And it really helps me hold relationships differently because they have different flavors.
Beautiful. Gwen, this is so awesome. This workshop is going to be fantastic. And, I know that human design works so well with astrology. And I think the reason I love astrology is very similar to the reasons why you love human design. I became more accepting of myself, more compassionate towards myself and others, because we all have each of the 12 signs in our chart. Right. It just depends on, where our planets are. We may have a stronger Gemini presence in our chart, right? Or a stronger Leo presence or whatnot. So What are your
Can some of these presents not be there? Like, could you have 3 things in Cancer and nothing in 2 of the other houses?
Yeah, you can have a bunch of planets in one house and the sign always governs that house, or you can have multiple signs in a house, and then you can have an empty house. But that sign will still influence that area of life. But
Right.
it becomes more concentrated if there are planets there. And then the next level is if you have several planets, a stellium in the certain house.
Yes.
What's your sun, moon, and rising sign? Do you know?
I am a Cancer sun. I am a Sagittarius moon, and I'm an Aries rising.
Oh, okay. I'm an Aries sun. So we have that in common.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you're
And
a
I think
wonderful
that's
mom.
why when I learned more about astrology through human design, that's why it kind of made sense that I love, home as a Cancer and a home body and family and tradition and like very grounded. But then there's also these very fiery parts of me. And there's also, this very adventurous, like why I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing is very
Yeah.
different than Cancer. So I think astrology, even just those basics of astrology, helped me understand myself so much.
I'm so glad to hear that. So, what else do you have going on that you are very excited about? I know that you have some projects coming up.
I do. So I have the Rise group coaching. It's a group coaching, but it's highly experiential, very embodied. We do a lot of both physical, your health, your nervous system, your limbic system. We go through each of the chakras, but then we start to open up into the heart and into the emotions. We open up into the sacral and the sensuality and the sexuality and the creativity. And we keep going up all the way through as somebody has like a desire or a dream or a goal. We approach it from a very different lens than maybe a traditional coaching. There's a lot of deep human design in it. There's a lot of moon mastery where women really learn how to honor every week of their menstrual cycle every month, if they're still bleeding and if they're not bleeding anymore, how to really open into this initiation of perimenopause, of the wise wild one, and moving into the energy of the crone. So I love the Rise group. It ends with a retreat. I've been doing that since 2018. And I also have the activation breathwork certification. And so that is really learning how to hold both like somatic, breath, shamanic, and spiritual space, trauma informed. You've come on and shared DEI. That's a very special container. So a lot of people do it because they want to become trained in breath work, somatic, really embodied, trauma informed breath work. And a lot of people do it because it is self-healing too. So they don't necessarily have an intention to hold space for others, or maybe they just want to hold space for themselves because they know breath work is very triggering for them, or it's too activating, or they don't feel comfortable doing it and they want to kind of move through some of that resistance that they have. And then I have the expansion membership, which involves one human design workshop every month, one live group breath work virtual every month, and then one Akashic record. So I also love the Akashic records. So that's my membership. And then I also have my podcast and I do one-on-one. And I also do a human design embodiment group. So it's 8 weeks and we go through the main components of human design. So like the personal health, relationships, emotions, soul purpose, intuition, business, money, and wealth, the foundations of human design. So it's something that will give people really deep understanding. Also, too, they could maybe look at people's charts and their families and have a better awareness of what they're looking at. It's not necessarily certified to give people the opportunity to read other people's charts because that is a lot more in depth, but it gives people the ability to be really embodied with their own as well as maybe with their family's charts. So.
Amazing. You're doing so many different things, so many very, very cool things. Well, so you're going to send me all of the links for all of these projects because I'm sure people are listening and watching and this is piquing their curiosity. So this is the Cycle Starters podcast, as you know. And so I end each interview asking my guest, what new cycles are you starting in your lineages?
I would definitely say boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure your cup is full. so that it overflows to other people. Honoring yes and no, honoring intuition, and I would also say being wild and wise, the wild and wise self that you are.
Beautiful. Gwen, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for saying yes doing this podcast, and thank you for saying yes to leading this group experience inside of the Ancestral Healing Collective monthly membership. Info will be in the description. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. We will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care.